Hey guys, welcome to today's episode of the Cipher Files. We're about to delve into a historical enigma that has captured imaginations for over a century, a true puzzle wrapped in Scotland's stark beauty and unforgiving seas. It's a story of isolation, duty, and a vanishing act that defies simple explanation. If you find yourself drawn to the unexplained, to those cold cases etched into history, this one is for you. If you want me to do more of these deep dives into historical mysteries and unexplained events, like the video and subscribe. It's more useful than you think in helping these stories reach others who are just as curious. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from, or what you already know or think about this particular mystery. Your insights are always welcome. Now, let's dive in and see how it all goes. You're turning your attention now to a remote, windswept speck of land off the coast of Scotland, a place known as Eilean Moor. It's part of the Flannan Isles, a small, uninhabited archipelago sitting out in the often treacherous North Atlantic. Imagine it, sheer cliffs, the constant roar of waves, and very little else. And perched atop this rugged landscape, a beacon of light for sailors navigating these dangerous waters, the Flannan Isles Lighthouse. Our story unfolds here, in December of 1900. The world was on the cusp of a new century, but out here, time seemed to move at the pace of the tides and the weather. The case that defines this location, that gives it its enduring, chilling fame, is the inexplicable disappearance of its three keepers, James Ducat, Thomas Marshall, and Donald McArthur. The alarm was first raised just after Christmas. A steamer, the Archer, passing by on the night of December 15th, noted the light was out, a critical failure for a lighthouse responsible for guiding ships. This was unusual, deeply concerning. Weeks passed before a relief vessel, the Hesperus, was able to reach Eilean Moor on December 26, delayed by severe storms. What they found, or rather, what they didn't find, launched a mystery that has never truly been solved. The keepers were gone. Vanished. The lighthouse itself seemed intact, the gate and main door were locked from the outside, an immediate point of confusion. Inside, a chilling scene, the table was set for a meal that was never eaten, a chair overturned, and in one room, oilskins were left behind, suggesting a sudden departure into the harsh weather without proper gear. The lamps were trimmed and ready, the clock had stopped. It was as if the men had simply evaporated into the air, leaving behind a perfectly preserved, yet profoundly unsettling, snapshot of their last moments. This event quickly seeped into the public consciousness, first in Scotland and the UK, and then spreading. Its historical popularity surged because it touched on primal fears, isolation, the power of nature, and the inexplicable vanishing of human beings from a confined space. Newspapers sensationalized it, poets wrote about it, most famously, Wilfred Wilson Gibson's ballad, Flannan Isle, which painted a vivid, eerie picture of the empty lighthouse and the swirling possibilities of what happened. It became a maritime legend, whispered in ports and debated in homes. It remains famous today precisely because it defies rational, simple explanation. While there were initial, official explanations, a rogue wave, perhaps, sweeping the men away, these theories don't fully account for all the strange details found within the lighthouse itself, particularly the locked gate and door, and the state of the interior. Was it something natural? A crime? Something more, otherworldly? The lack of definitive evidence allows for endless speculation, keeping the mystery alive in the digital age. You see forums dedicated to it, podcasts dissecting the evidence, theories ranging from the plausible to the fantastical. It's a story that invites you to become a detective yourself, poring over the limited clues and trying to piece together the truth. While rooted in Scottish history, the Flannan Isles mystery has definitely found its way into the cultural fabric of the United States. You might encounter it in documentaries on unexplained phenomena, woven into books about famous historical mysteries, or even referenced in fiction that draws on themes of isolation and the unknown. The sheer enigma of it transcends borders. The human mind is universally captivated by stories where people simply disappear without a trace from seemingly secure locations. It taps into a collective fascination with the limits of our understanding and the vast, untamed power of the sea and the elements. American television shows and authors looking for compelling, real-life mysteries often turn to cases like this because they come pre-packaged with intrigue and an unresolved core that resonates with audiences. The elements that make this case inherently mysterious, eerie, and compelling are numerous. Firstly, the setting itself. Eilean Moor is the epitome of isolation, a place where you are utterly at the mercy of nature. This amplifies the vulnerability of the keepers and the unsettling nature of their disappearance. Then there are the inconsistencies, the locked door from the outside while the men were presumably inside, the untouched food, the dropped oilskins, the lack of struggle or disturbance within the tower. Each detail is a small, sharp piece of glass that doesn't quite fit into any easy picture. The fact that experienced, competent men simply vanished from their post, leaving behind an active lamp and a set table, feels deeply wrong, defying logic. It leaves you with a pervasive sense of unease, making you wonder what force could be so powerful, so swift, and so complete as to erase 3 lives without leaving a single body behind. It's a perfect storm of place, circumstance, and unanswered questions that ensures the Flannan Isles mystery continues to haunt our imaginations. Okay, let's set the scene. You need to picture this place, Eilean Moor. It's a small island, one of the Flannan Isles, part of the Outer Hebrides way off the northwest coast of Scotland. This isn't a cozy, picturesque island. It's rugged, exposed, and remote. The Atlantic Ocean batters its shores relentlessly, and the weather here can turn from calm to violently stormy in a matter of minutes. It's the kind of place that feels cut off from the world, a lonely rock in a vast, grey sea. And perched on this rock is the Lighthouse. A tall, solid tower built to withstand the fury of the elements. Its purpose is vital, to warn ships away from these dangerous, unforgiving shores. For sailors navigating these treacherous waters, that light is a beacon of safety, a signpost in the dark. But for the men who keep it running, it's a prison of sorts, a place of long, solitary watches and constant, demanding work, totally isolated from the mainland. Life here revolves around routine, keeping the lamp burning brightly, maintaining the machinery, recording observations, and just enduring the isolation together. A principal keeper, a first assistant, and a second assistant are always on duty, rotating shifts, living and working in the confines of the tower and its adjacent living quarters. It takes a particular kind of person to handle this kind of solitude, this constant vigilance, day after day. Now, the events that unfold here start to take a turn sometime in December 1900. You see, regular communication with the lighthouse is essential. The keepers usually signal their status, relaying weather information and confirming all is well. The supply vessel, the Hesperus, makes scheduled visits to drop off provisions, fresh oil for the lamp, and rotate the keepers, bringing fresh men and taking others back to the mainland for shore leave. The Hesperus is scheduled to arrive at Eilean Moor on December 20, 1900, for its regular relief mission. It carries Captain Jim Harvey, a seasoned mariner, Robert Muirhead, the superintendent of the Northern Lighthouse Board, who is responsible for the safety and operation of the lighthouses in his district, and a relief keeper, Joseph Moore, who is due to take over from one of the men on the island. There's also a small crew. They are the investigators, though they don't know it yet. They expect a routine transfer. The men currently stationed on Eilean Moor are Principal Keeper Thomas Marshall, First Assistant James Ducat, and Second Assistant Donald McArthur. These are experienced keepers. Marshall is older, a respected veteran of the service. Ducat is a solid, reliable hand. MacArthur is known to be competent but perhaps a bit more volatile under the strain of the isolated life. A fourth keeper, William Ross, is supposed to be there, but he is on shore leave, which is why the relief keeper, Moore, is coming. So, just 3 men on the island. The last known contact from the lighthouse comes sometime before the Hesperus sets sail. The lighthouse has a system of signals they use. Things seem normal. However, as the Hesperus approaches Eilean Moor on December 20th, something immediately feels wrong. You see the island, you see the lighthouse, but there is no flag flying from the mast to signal, all well, which is standard procedure upon sighting the relief vessel. There is no response to the Hesperus's whistle blasts or signal flares. The light, the very reason the station exists, is not lit as it should be. The weather is bad, preventing them from landing immediately. The Hesperus has to withdraw and shelter for a couple of days. The delay adds to the growing sense of unease. Why aren't the keepers responding? Is it just the bad weather preventing signals? Or is something more serious happening? Finally, on December 26, 6 days after they first arrived and saw the absence of the signal, the Hesperus is able to launch a small boat and attempt a landing. Superintendent Muirhead leads the landing party, which includes Joseph Moore, the relief keeper, and a couple of sailors. As they row towards the landing platform, a heavy iron gate meant to secure the entrance to the path up to the lighthouse is closed and bolted from the inside. This is the first truly puzzling detail. Why would the keepers lock themselves in? Moore, the relief keeper, is the first to scramble ashore and climb the steep steps towards the lighthouse. He's eager to find out what's wrong. He reaches the main door of the lighthouse, but it's shut. Not locked, just shut. He opens it and enters the living quarters. And this is where the scene starts to become truly unsettling. You step inside with him. The main room is tidy, everything in its place. But there is no sign of the keepers. He calls out their names, Marshall, Ducat, McArthur. But only the sound of the wind and the sea answers him. He moves through the rooms. In the kitchen area, he finds remnants of a meal. An overturned chair lies on the floor near the table. This is another strange detail. It looks like someone left in a hurry, perhaps knocking the chair over, but why? And where did they go? Moore continues his search, moving through the tower. He checks the lamp room at the top. The lamp is clean and ready, the oil reservoir's full, but it's not lit. It seems like the nightly routine was simply abandoned. He finds the keeper's logbook, but it provides no immediate answers about their whereabouts. He goes back down. He notices the oilskins, the heavy, waterproof jackets and trousers essential for anyone venturing outside in the terrible weather of Eilean Moor, are missing from their usual hooks. But not all of them. Only 2 sets of oilskins are gone. A third set remains hanging, unused. This is deeply odd. If they all went out together into a storm, wouldn't they all take their gear? He finds the last entry in the logbook. It is dated December 15th. It mentions severe gales. Later entries describe the storm's intensity, noting that Marshall was anxious and Ducat was quiet. The final entry, ominously, notes that the storm had abated. But if the storm was over on the 15th, why were they gone sometime after that? Muirhead and the rest of the landing party arrive and begin their own search, systematic and thorough, expanding outwards from the lighthouse. They find no trace of the men inside the tower. They search the small island, the landing platforms, the foghorn station, the winch area used for hauling supplies. Down at the west landing, the one accessible only in calm weather, they find more perplexing clues. Ropes are scattered untidily, something completely uncharacteristic for disciplined keepers. A box containing mooring ropes is damaged, as if something heavy hit it. It seems they were down here, but again, why? The sheer emptiness of the place, the absence of the men who should be there, guarding the light, is profoundly disturbing. It's as if they simply vanished into thin air. The lighthouse stands silent and empty, its vital light unlit, its keepers gone. And the initial observations only deepen the mystery: a locked gate from the inside, an overturned chair, missing oilskins but not all of them, scattered ropes, and a final log entry that seems to contradict the reality of their disappearance. The stage is set for an investigation, but where do you even begin when the only witnesses are the wind and the waves? Okay, let's turn our attention now from the initial shock and the missing men themselves to what was actually discovered when the relief vessel, the Hesperus, finally managed to land a few days later. What hard, verifiable facts did they uncover at the Flannan Isles lighthouse? This is where we really start sifting through the details, the pieces of the puzzle left behind. The primary sources we have to rely on are official. There are the reports filed by the Northern Lighthouse Board, beginning with the initial, stark report from the Hesperus crew themselves. We have the statements of the relief crew, men like Thomas Marshall, the skipper of the Hesperus, and Joseph Moore, the relief keeper who was supposed to be trading places with one of the missing men. Their first-hand accounts of walking into that silent tower are critical. And perhaps most importantly, there's the detailed report compiled by Robert Muirhead, the superintendent of the NLB, who conducted the formal investigation days later. You can think of these documents as our primary footprint of what was found. They describe the physical state of the lighthouse, they record observations, and they note what was normal versus what was distinctly not normal. So, let's walk through what they saw. When the relief crew first got inside, which itself was a bit of a struggle because the landing proved difficult due to lingering heavy seas, they found the main door, the heavy outer door, was shut and bolted from the inside. This is an immediate flag, isn't it? If the men had been swept away or ventured outside and been lost, you'd expect the door to potentially be open, or at least not secured from within. Stepping inside, the scene was, well, unnervingly normal in some ways, and deeply disturbing in others. The living quarters showed signs of recent occupation. A meal, perhaps breakfast or a late supper, was sitting uneaten. The beds were unmade, suggesting they had perhaps only just risen or were intending to return shortly. Oilskins, waterproof outer gear essential for working outside in that environment, were missing from their usual hooks. Just 3 sets. This suggests the men did go outside, or at least were dressed for it. But why only 3? And where are the men? The logbook, the Lighthouse Journal, is another crucial piece of evidence. The entries are particularly eerie. The final entry is dated December 15th. It notes a severe storm, winds that had never been seen before. But critically, the last entries take on a strange tone. The principal keeper, James Ducat, notes they were confined to the house. On the 14th, the entry says, storm continued, wind NW by W, keepers quiet. Wish it would abate. The final entry, on the 15th, is chillingly simple, storm ended, sea calm. God is over all. This log presents a confusing picture. It describes a violent storm, yet ends with a description of calm conditions before the men disappeared, which contradicts later accounts of the sea still being rough when the Hesperus arrived days later. And why the strange tone, the notes about the keepers being quiet or praying? Was it just the stress of the storm or something else? Other physical details add to the puzzle. Equipment inside seemed mostly in order. The lamps were clean, the machinery was functioning. The clocks had stopped, which isn't entirely unusual in a storm, but it adds another layer to the arrested state of the place. Out on the west landing, however, there was evidence of significant storm damage. A box containing mooring ropes had been broken open, its contents scattered. An iron railing was bent out of shape, and portions of the concrete path were gouged out. This clearly showed the power of the waves that had struck the island. So, we have these pieces, a bolted door, an uneaten meal, missing oilskins, strange log entries, and signs of severe storm damage outside. Now, let's consider the strengths of this evidence. First and foremost, these are official reports from a reputable body, the Northern Lighthouse Board. This wasn't some tabloid fabrication, these were the findings of experienced maritime men and investigators. The initial observations were made by multiple individuals, the Hesperus crew, who corroborated the scene before the formal investigation even began. The physical state of the lighthouse and its contents are tangible facts that could be recorded and verified at the time. You can't easily fake a bolted door or a damaged railing. However, this evidence also has significant weaknesses, limitations imposed largely by the time period. The most obvious weakness? The absolute lack of physical remains. No bodies were ever found, not on the island, not washed ashore anywhere else. This absence is deafening. Modern forensics were non-existent in 1900. Investigators relied on what they could see and touch. There were no procedures for collecting trace evidence, no DNA analysis, no advanced photographic documentation in the way we understand it today. The investigation was thorough for its time, yes, but it was limited by the available technology and understanding of crime scene preservation, though they didn't necessarily suspect a crime initially. Witness statements, while valuable, are subject to human memory, perception, and potential bias, even if unintentional. The relief crew and Muirhead arrived days after the last log entry, meaning the scene had potentially been sitting undisturbed, or perhaps slightly disturbed by the initial crew's entry, for a significant period before the detailed examination. Are there deficiencies or inconsistencies in the reports? Absolutely. The log entries themselves are perhaps the biggest inconsistency. They describe conditions on the 15th as calm after the storm, yet the damage on the west landing clearly indicates waves of immense power struck the island, power capable of reaching 100 feet above sea level to cause that kind of damage. If the storm had ended and the sea was calm as the log suggests, how and why did the damage occur? Muirhead later speculated the keepers might have gone out in a lull to secure something and been caught by a rogue wave. But the log doesn't mention them going out. It says, storm ended, sea calm. This discrepancy fuels much of the mystery. Another point is the bolted door. Muirhead's theory about a rogue wave implies the men were outside when they were swept away. But if all three were outside, why and how was the main door found bolted from the inside? Did someone survive long enough to get back inside and bolt the door before also disappearing? It doesn't align neatly. The missing oilskins fit the caught outside theory, but the uneaten meal and unmade bed suggest they weren't fully prepared for a long stint outside. It's a collection of details that individually might make sense, but together, they resist forming a single, coherent explanation. The evidence points in conflicting directions, highlighting the gaps in our understanding of those final moments. And it's in these gaps, these inconsistencies, that the enigma of the Flannan Isles truly resides. Okay, you've sifted through the facts, you've examined the scene as it was discovered, and you've seen the initial reactions. Now, the human mind, yours and mine, starts to piece things together, proposing potential explanations for what happened. This is where the theories really take shape. You're trying to fit the pieces of the puzzle, the locked door, the untouched meal, the missing oilskins, the overturned chair, into a coherent picture. One of the most immediately discussed hypotheses centers around the sheer power of nature. Could a massive rogue wave have simply swept the keepers away? It's a compelling thought. You look at the exposed location of Flannan Isle, battered by the North Atlantic. The powerful storms that lash this coast are legendary. The theory suggests the keepers might have been outside, perhaps securing something, when an unexpectedly large wave crashed over the platform or even higher, dragging them out to sea. What are the arguments for this? The sea was indeed rough around the time of the disappearance, though perhaps not exceptionally so according to the records initially. You also have the fact that the storm was severe enough to delay the relief vessel. The log entries before the silence mention stormy weather. The damage noted later by the relief crew, ropes scattered, things out of place, could be consistent with a powerful wave impact, though it wasn't catastrophic structural damage. The fact that they were never found also fits the idea of being lost at sea. But then you have to consider the arguments against. A single rogue wave, even a large one, would typically leave more obvious signs of its passage on the solid stone structure of the lighthouse itself. There were no reports of extreme, unprecedented waves in the area from other ships or coastal observers at the exact time the silence began. Crucially, why would all three keepers be outside together in such conditions, especially when one, Thomas Marshall, was an experienced principal keeper who would understand the dangers? Standard protocol dictated that at least one keeper should always remain inside tending the light and keeping watch. The positions of items found inside, like the untouched meal and the overturned chair, don't perfectly align with a sudden, violent external event like a single wave washing over them. They suggest something happened inside or immediately outside the door in a way that prevented return. Moving inward, literally, you encounter the chilling hypothesis of internal conflict. Could tensions amongst the three men have escalated to a fatal confrontation? Lighthouse life was notoriously isolated and demanding. You're stuck on a rock with the same two people for weeks on end, in cramped conditions, under constant pressure. Personalities could clash. Resentments could build. The arguments for this often point to the perceived unease or distress mentioned in later interpretations of the logbook entries, though these are subjective and retrospective readings. The abruptness of the disappearance, with everything seemingly left as it was inside, could, in a dark interpretation, suggest a sudden, violent act. Imagine an argument exploding, perhaps fueled by stress or existing friction, leading to murder, possibly followed by suicide or accidental death of the perpetrator trying to dispose of a body or escape. However, the arguments against are significant. There's no concrete evidence of a struggle found inside the lighthouse. No blood, no signs of forced entry or significant damage beyond what could be attributed to weather or general disarray. While life was stressful, the keepers were professionals chosen for their reliability and ability to work together. There were no prior reports of serious discord amongst this specific crew. For all three men to be involved in or become victims of a violent confrontation simultaneously seems improbable without leaving more definitive traces. Then there's the idea of external foul play. Could intruders have reached the island and attacked the keepers? This theory ventures into the realm of pirates, foreign spies, or smugglers. Flannan Isle was remote, potentially an ideal spot for clandestine activities. The four arguments here are weak but persistent in speculation. The idea that outsiders could have forced their way in, perhaps after being discovered by the keepers, and then taken or disposed of the men and left without a trace. The mystery itself fuels this, the lack of a clear natural cause opens the door to human intervention. But the against arguments are substantial. How would intruders have reached the island undetected, particularly in rough seas? Landing on Flannan Isle is notoriously difficult even in good weather. Once there, breaching a fortified lighthouse designed to withstand storms would be incredibly challenging without explosives or specialized equipment, neither of which left any trace. Taking three grown men captive or killing them without a struggle or any signs of forced entry stretches credulity. And what would be the motive? What valuable secrets or goods would be hidden in a remote lighthouse? This hypothesis feels more like fiction than a likely explanation based on the evidence. Finally, you delve into the more speculative and even supernatural theories. Could a giant sea creature have taken them? A ghost or malevolent spirit? An alien abduction? These ideas capture the imagination precisely because they defy rational explanation. The complete disappearance of three people from a secure, known location feels deeply unsettling, prompting searches for explanations beyond the mundane. Arguments for these often rely on folklore, the inherent eeriness of remote places, and the sheer strangeness of the event. The sense of something wrong perceived by the relief crew, the silence, the overturned chair, these details can be twisted to fit almost any spooky narrative. But, of course, the arguments against are overwhelming. There is zero verifiable evidence to support any of these claims. No tracks of giant birds, no alien residue, no ghostly apparitions recorded by the subsequent keepers. These theories are firmly in the realm of myth and storytelling, not factual analysis. Beyond the specific scenarios, you also need to analyze the potential underlying causes that could have contributed to any of these fates. Human factors are key. What were the dynamics between the keepers? We know little about their specific personalities or potential conflicts, but stress, boredom, isolation, or even a momentary lapse in judgment due to exhaustion could play a role in various scenarios, from internal conflict to being caught outside in bad weather. Keeper error is also a possibility, misjudging conditions, neglecting protocol, or some mistake that led to a dangerous situation. Natural factors, as mentioned with the rogue wave theory, are undeniable. The severe weather conditions around the island were a constant threat. The unique geography of Flannan Isle, its jagged cliffs and exposed position, amplified these dangers. Even if a single rogue wave wasn't the culprit, a combination of high winds, heavy seas, and treacherous footing could easily lead to an accident if the keepers were outside. Technical and technological factors, or rather their limitations at the time, are also relevant. This was 1900. Communication was limited. There was no instant radio contact with the mainland. Once the communication ceased, there was no way to know what was happening or to call for help. The lighthouse equipment itself was robust, designed to withstand the elements, but it required constant human attention. Any issue requiring keepers to be outside to secure equipment or make repairs in bad weather would put them at risk. The technology allowed the light to shine, but it didn't protect the keepers from the raw power of the ocean or each other. As you weigh these possibilities, you're constantly coming back to the same few pieces of evidence, trying to see which puzzle fits best. The missing oilskins strongly suggest they went outside. The secured door implies they intended to return or were prevented from doing so quickly. The state of the interior is the biggest enigma, not consistent with a massive flood, but also not clearly pointing to violence. You're sifting through the layers, trying to find the explanation that accounts for the most details without requiring impossible circumstances. Now, as we reach the final part of this puzzling saga, you might be asking, has this mystery ever been truly, officially explained? Has someone finally decoded the cipher of the Flannan Isles? Well, the official answer is no. The case remains, to this day, an unsolved mystery. There is no single, universally accepted explanation for what happened to Thomas Marshall, James Ducat, and Donald McArthur. The investigation by the Northern Lighthouse Board, led by Robert Muirhead, concluded it was likely some extraordinary wave or rogue sea that swept the men away. This remains the most officially cited possibility, primarily because it aligns with the signs of disturbance observed, the shifted box, the ropes scattered, the damage near the landing. However, even this conclusion is presented cautiously, acknowledging the lack of definitive proof and the perplexing details, like the door being closed and the clock stopped. It's accepted by some because it offers a logical, albeit tragic, maritime accident scenario, something understandable in the harsh reality of lighthouse keeping. Yet, it's controversial to many others precisely because it fails to account for all the evidence, or lack thereof, why three experienced keepers would be outside together in such conditions without leaving notes, why the conditions weren't noted in the logbook, and the almost complete absence of personal effects missing from inside the lighthouse itself. The primary reasons it remains unsolved boil down to exactly this, the profound lack of conclusive evidence. There were no witnesses, no bodies were ever found, and the physical clues left behind were ambiguous, open to multiple interpretations. Was the scattered rope evidence of men desperately trying to secure something against a storm? Or something else entirely? Were the stopped clocks a sign of a sudden, catastrophic event? Or perhaps something more deliberate? These conflicting interpretations, coupled with the limitations of the investigation conducted over a century ago, before forensic science as we know it, on a remote, wave-battered rock, mean that every theory, from the plausible to the fantastical, has holes. The official investigation, while diligent for its time, couldn't fully probe every angle or eliminate every possibility definitively. Could it ever be resolved in the future? It seems highly improbable. Without new, tangible evidence, perhaps something recovered from the seabed around the islands, an unlikely discovery on the islands themselves after so much time, or a deathbed confession from someone involved, if foul play was a factor, the available information is unlikely to yield a definitive answer. The passage of time has long since erased any subtle physical clues that might have existed. The mystery feels permanently locked in that moment in December 1900, leaving us to forever speculate. And the consequences and impacts of this unresolved mystery are significant, rippling out in various directions. For the families of the three keepers, the lack of closure was, and for descendants still is, perhaps the most profound consequence. To lose loved ones without knowing exactly how, to have their fate remain a subject of public debate and speculation, adds a layer of enduring grief and uncertainty. There was the official relief fund, but no true understanding or finality. The mystery also had a tangible impact on lighthouse operational procedures. While the official stance leaned towards an act of nature, the sheer strangeness of the event prompted reflection. While not a complete overhaul, it underscored the extreme dangers faced by keepers and reinforced the importance of stringent safety protocols, communication, and perhaps subtly contributed to the eventual move towards automation, reducing the human risk on such isolated outposts. Lessons learned often arise not just from understanding what happened, but from confronting the terrifying possibility of the inexplicable. But perhaps the most lasting impact is on culture and public fascination. The story of the vanished keepers of Eilean more quickly captured the public imagination, morphing from a tragic incident into a maritime legend. It has inspired countless poems, like Wilfred Wilson Gibson's famous Flannan Isle novels, theatrical plays, and films, each attempting to grapple with the unknown. The mystery's enduring appeal lies in its core elements: a remote, dramatic setting, ordinary men disappearing without a trace, and the chilling question of what could possibly cause such a thing. It taps into our deepest fears of isolation, the overwhelming power of nature, and the possibility that sometimes, things simply vanish, leaving no satisfactory explanation. And this brings us back to the present, to the enduring enigma of the Flannan Isles. The mystery remains unsolved, a dark knot in the fabric of maritime history, inviting us to ponder the forces at play that dark December week. Conclusion: slow down pace, gentle tone. So, where does that leave us with the puzzle of Eilean More? We've explored the desolate island, the routine of the keepers, the strange logbook entries, the puzzling state of the lighthouse upon discovery, and the myriad theories, from rogue waves to sea serpents, foreign spies to ghostly apparitions. We've seen how a simple, yet profound, disappearance has defied explanation for over a century, leaving families heartbroken and protocol reviewed. The story of Thomas, James, and Donald isn't just a historical footnote, it's a powerful reminder of the raw power of the sea, the isolation of those who guard our coasts, and the unsettling reality that some questions may never have definitive answers. It continues to fascinate us because it challenges our need for logic and closure, leaving a void filled only by speculation and the chilling whisper of the unknown. It's a mystery that echoes in the wind around the remote islands, a testament to human vulnerability in the face of nature's might, or perhaps something far stranger. Call for engagement. What do you think happened on Eilean More that December? Have any of the theories we've discussed resonated with you, or do you have your own hypothesis about the fate of the keepers? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. This is a story that sparks so much debate and imaginative thinking, and sharing your perspectives only adds to the fascination. If you found this deep dive into the Flannan Isles mystery intriguing, please do give the video a like, it really helps support the channel. And don't forget to subscribe to the Cipher Files for more journeys into the world's unsolved puzzles. Let's keep exploring these mysteries together.